Welcome to week 5. This week we are going to discuss the intercultural communications. The objectives of this week include understanding the basics of other customs, languages, and cultures, to recognize that different cultures do have the different ways of communications, to be sensitive towards cultural stereotypes that may affect or interfere with the intercultural communications, and to be effectively communicating internally and externally. First, let's look at the definition of basic custom, cultures, and language. Custom in many other cases could be a tradition. It is defined as a group pattern of habitual activity usually transmitted from one generation to another. The example of that could be the Catholics giving up meat on Fridays during the Lent. Culture. The culture is a customary beliefs, social forms, and material traits of a racial, religious, or social group. For example, the ancient Greek civilization is considered to be a culture. Language. The definition of language is a system that consists of the development, acquisition, maintenance, and the use of complex systems of communication, particularly in the human ability to do so. For example, English or French. We also need to know what is a non-verbal communication when we meet someone from another culture or who speaks another language. Non-verbal communication is defined as a way people send and receive information to each other beyond words. According to Dr. Charles Tidwell, the concept of non-verbal communication serves a number of functions. One is to accent the meaning of verbal messages, for instance, like pointing while stating the direction, or to complement or contradict verbal messages, example, indicating a sarcasm using a verbal tone, or to regulate the interactions with others using the nonverbal cues to indicate when people should and should not speak. And finally is to substitute for verbal messages, for instance, like nodding instead of saying yes. Here are the expression of some of the nonverbal communications. Even though somebody who doesn't speak the same language, you could still see the expression, whether they are happy or sad, or fear or surprise, or even anger or disgust. Communicating across cultures, it is important to understand that each culture has a set rules. People tend not to be aware of our own cultural bias simply because has been imprinted in us at the earliest age. As the technology expands, the business has become expanding on the global market as well. When people are working remotely, it should be the same as working face to face. And so how does electronic communication work from one country to another, or English is not the native language? Communicating across culture, understanding cultural diversity is important. The different culture expressed differently, even in speaking or writing. Develop the awareness of the individual cultures when you communicate with them, allows them to, with the appropriate greetings of physical contact, for instance, like handshake, cheek kissing, in the French culture. We got to be patient, courteous, and curious. Sometimes can also be helpful. As a manager, of a diverse team, you should be aware of your team members' needs based on their backgrounds, and be very discreet when you communicate with them. And keep it simple in communication. Sometimes no humor does help. This is a new thing in communications, and that has become a challenge for many people. How to communicate to trans people in general. If it's not sure, it's best to address. When you meet someone, you're not sure whether that person, sex or identity, it is best to address the person by name and do some research about the person in advance. Today, there's no such thing as just man versus woman. This whole new trans umbrellas group of people, and there's some terms that people identify themselves. Here are some of the examples. A gender person is basically a gender neutral. And another term is an androgynous. Is neither identify themselves masculine nor feminine. Or bigender is somebody gender identity as both man and woman. In some other cases, binary, when a person has both sexes, male and female. Some other terms that we just need to be aware of when you communicate it with the person, when they identify themselves, like dead name, gender dysphoria, gender expression, etc., etc. It is important to be aware and sensitive with all of these new terms, and keep up with how you communicate either in writing or in person with the individual. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and please go through the assignment. There are going to be some interesting articles as well. Thank you. Bye-bye.